Okay, I've spent the better part of 4 years chasing this continent around, sleeping in airport chairs in Oslo, eating cold pizza on a ferry deck at 6 in the morning, hiking in the dark with a headlamp because somebody on the internet told me the sunrise was worth it. And it usually was. What I want to do in this video is not just throw 20 famous places at you in random order. I want to take you on the actual route. We're going to start in the far North Atlantic, drop down the coast of Europe, cut across the middle, and finish in the Alps and the Arctic. West to east, north to south, and back up again. One continuous journey, 20 stops, counting down to the single place that I genuinely think is the most iconic thing you can see in Europe. And for every one of them, I'm going to give you the same 4 things, because those are the 4 things I always wish videos gave me. How you actually get there, when you should actually go, one extra thing nearby that most people skip, and one fact that made me stop and go, wait, really? So grab a coffee. This is a long one. Number 20, and we're starting somewhere almost nobody has on their list. Number 20, Étretat, on the coast of Normandy. I ended up here almost by accident. I had a spare day before a flight out of Paris. I saw a photo of a cliff with a hole in it, and I thought, sure, why not? 2.5 hours later, I'm standing on a pebble beach, staring at the Port d'Aval, this enormous white chalk arch stepping out into the English Channel like an elephant putting its trunk in the water. And there's a needle of rock next to it, 70 meters of freestanding chalk, just standing there in the surf. The scale is what gets you. Photos flatten it completely. You have to climb the path up the cliff on the right side of the beach to understand it, and that climb takes about 15 minutes, and it is worth every single one. Here's the fact that reframed the whole place for me. Monet painted these cliffs over and over. Not once, obsessively dozens of canvases, coming back season after season to catch the same arch in different light. So when you stand up there in the late afternoon, and the chalk goes this warm apricot color against grey-green water, you're standing inside a painting that's hanging in museums all over the world right now. Getting there, it's easiest as a day trip from Paris, train to Le Havre or Rouen, and then a bus, or just rent a car. The Normandy Coast Road is a genuinely great drive. Best time is late spring through early autumn, and honestly go on a slightly moody day. Flat blue sky does this place no favors. You want cloud, you want wind, you want the channel doing something dramatic. Number 20, and a soft start, because I promise you it escalates from here. Number 19, Cinque Terre, 5 villages stacked onto the cliffs of the Italian Riviera like somebody spilled a box of pastel paint down a rock face. Rio Maggiore, Manarola, Corniglia, Vernazza, Monterosso. And the reason they look the way they look is not charm, it's fear. These were fortified fishing villages, built vertical and defensive because pirates raided this coast constantly. They're documented as far back as 1056, and they joined the Republic of Genoa in the 12th century. Manarola's bell tower still has the spikes on it from when it doubled as a pirate watchtower. That's my sharp fact for this one. The postcard villages you see on every Italy Instagram account are essentially medieval panic architecture. Vernazza is the one I'd tell you to build your day around, because it's the only one of the 5 with a natural harbor, which means it has this perfect little curved seafront where the boats come in and the whole village funnels down to a piazza on the water. Sit there with a spritz at 7 in the evening. That's the memory you'll keep. How you get there? Fly into Pisa or Genoa, then take the regional train. The train line runs right through all 5 villages, and it's absurdly convenient. A few minutes between each stop. The other way to do it, and the way I'd push you toward, is the Blue Trail. It links all 5 villages, 12 kilometers, about 6 hours of walking if you're stopping for photos and lunch, which you will be. The Corniglia to Monterosso stretch requires a trekking card, that's about $7.50, and they do check. Bring water, there's real climbing in it, this is not a flat coastal stroll. Best time is spring or early autumn. July and August the trains are packed and the trail is a queue. Go in May. Go in late September. You'll get the same light and a fraction of the people. Number 18. Positano. If Cinque Terre is 5 villages hiding from pirates, Positano is 1 village showing off. It pours down a cliff in tiers of peach and cream and terracotta, And at the bottom, there's a dome of yellow and green majolica tiles, and then a grey pebble beach, and then the Tyrrhenian Sea. It's been a resort since Roman times. Genuinely, the Romans had villas here, and the local myth ties this stretch of coast to the sirens, the ones Odysseus had himself lashed to the mast for. Stand on the beach at dusk and you can see how that story got started. Getting in is easier than people think. Fly into Naples, then take the Alilaro ferry. It's about 40 minutes and around €13, and arriving by sea is genuinely the correct way to arrive. The village unfolds in front of you as you come around the headland. Book it ahead in peak season though, they sell out. The alternative is the coast road by bus, which is spectacular and also a white-knuckle experience I only need to have once. Now, the extra thing, the Path of the Gods. It's a 7.8-kilometer hike along the cliffs high above the coast, starting up at Bomerano, and for most of it you're walking a balcony in the sky, with the whole Amalfi coast laid out below you and the island of Capri, sitting out in the haze. And then it ends. And the ending is roughly 1,700 steps straight down into Positano. 1,700. My legs were shaking at step 900. Wear proper footwear. I cannot stress this enough. I watched somebody attempt that descent in sandals, and I think about them often. Best time, April to June, or September into October. July and August, the coast is hot, expensive and rammed, and the stone holds the heat like an oven. Number 17. We track west along the coast to the French Riviera, Saint-Tropez, Cannes, Nice, and then to the strangest little country on the Mediterranean, Monaco. Here's the thing about the Riviera. I went in expecting to feel like I couldn't afford to be there, and in Monte Carlo, sure. But Nice is a real city with a real market and a pebble beach where actual French people go swimming after work, and the Promenade des Anglais at sunset with that impossible blue, they call it the Baie des Anges, is free. The whole coast is free, actually. The money is a layer on top of something that was already beautiful. Nice's airport is the gateway for the entire coast, and it's right on the water, so your landing is over the sea. Trains run along the coast constantly and cheaply, which is how I'd get around. Driving the Corniche roads is glorious, and parking is a nightmare. Now the fact, and this one is my favorite piece of trivia in the whole video. The Monte Carlo Casino opened in 1856, designed by Charles Garnier, the same architect who did the Paris Opera House, which is why it looks like an opera house that decided to gamble. The profits from that casino were so enormous that by 1869, Monaco abolished income tax for residents. An entire country's tax policy funded by a roulette wheel. And the twist, Monegasque citizens are legally barred from gambling in the casino. They built the money machine and then locked themselves out of the room. You can walk in as a visitor, dress code applies, and even just standing in the atrium is worth it. Best time on this coast is April to June or September to October. Summer is hot and the whole of Europe is on that beach with you. Number 16. Mont-Saint-Michel. There are places that photograph well, and there are places that stop your brain, and this one stops your brain, because your brain cannot immediately work out how it exists. A medieval abbey, stacked on a granite cone, standing alone in a vast tidal flat off the coast of Normandy, with a village spiraling up around its base. It looks less like a building and more like something that grew. It's been a place of pilgrimage for over 1,000 years, and here's a detail people don't expect. For a long stretch, it wasn't holy at all. It was a prison. Right up until 1863, revolutionaries and political prisoners locked in an abbey in the sea. Now the reason to plan carefully. Mont-Saint-Michel sits in a bay with the highest tides in continental Europe. The water can move up to 15 meters. And near the equinoxes, you get what the French call the Grande Marée, a tidal coefficient of 110 or higher, and the sea comes racing in and completely surrounds the island. Fully, an island again, the way it was meant to be, for roughly 90 minutes. In 2026, the biggest of those are around the 20th to 22nd of March and the 13th of September. If you can build a trip around those dates, do it. Getting there. TGV from Paris to Rennes, then a coach out to the bay. From the shuttle drop-off, you walk the footbridge. It's 760 meters, and it was built in 2015 for a very specific reason. The old causeway was a solid road, and it was causing the bay to silt up around the mount, slowly turning the island into a peninsula, so they replaced it with a bridge on stilts that lets the water flow underneath and scour the sand away. They engineered the tide back in. Go early or stay overnight in the village. The day trip crowds are intense, and the mount after dark, lit up with everyone gone, is a completely different place. Number 15. Venice. I know. Everybody's been, everybody has an opinion, and half the opinions are that it's too crowded and too expensive, and you should skip it. Ignore them. Get up at 6 in the morning and walk. That's the whole secret. Venice at 6 a.m., with the mist off the canals and the delivery boats and literally nobody in St. Mark's Square, is one of the great experiences available to a human being. Then by 11 it's chaos and you go take a nap. Some numbers, because Venice's numbers are ridiculous. It's built across 118 islands, linked by over 400 bridges, on wooden piles driven into the mud of a lagoon. St. Mark's Basilica traces back to 828 AD. The Doge's palace went up between 1345 and 1436, and the Rialto Bridge, built 1588 to 1591, came out of a design competition, and one of the entries they rejected was by Michelangelo. They looked at a Michelangelo and said, "No thanks, we'll go with the other guy." That's Venice's confidence in one sentence. Then there's Acqua Alta, the high water. When the tides and the wind line up, the lagoon comes up through the drains and floods the low ground, and St. Mark's Square is the lowest point in the city, so it goes first. A typical event lasts around 90 minutes and then drains away. These days, the Meuse barrier, enormous floodgates at the lagoon inlets, can rise and hold the sea out entirely. Getting in. Fly to Marco Polo and take the Ali Laguna boat across the lagoon rather than the bus. It costs more and it takes longer, and you arrive in Venice from the water, which is how the city was designed to be entered. Best time is April to May or September to October. And my one piece of advice, get properly lost. Put the phone away, pick a direction, walk. Venice is small enough that you can't really be lost, and the good stuff is never on the main route. Number 14. Seceda in the Dolomites, and this is the first place in the countdown where I actually said something out loud when I saw it. Picture a meadow, rolling, green, soft, cows with bells on. Now imagine that meadow just ends. It tilts up and becomes a wall of grey rock teeth, a serrated ridge slicing straight up out of the grass like the spine of something buried. That contrast, soft green against violent grey, is why this is one of the most photographed ridgelines on Earth, and standing at the edge of it in person is a completely different order of experience. How you get there? From the village of Ortisei in Val Gardena, you take a gondola and then a cable car. That's roughly 20 minutes of ascent total. And then it's a 10 to 15-minute walk to the viewpoint. That's it. That is the entire effort required for one of the great views in Europe, which feels almost like cheating. Go up on the first lifts, be there by 7:30 in the morning. By 11 there's a line of tripods along that ridge, and you'll be waiting your turn. There's also a quieter way in. The Col Raiser gondola from Santa Cristina, one village over. Same mountain, different approach, noticeably fewer people. Best window is mid-June to late September. Outside that the lifts run limited or not at all, and the snow's still on the meadows. The extra thing you should not skip is Alpe di Siusi, just down the valley, Europe's largest high alpine pasture, 56 square kilometers of rolling grassland at altitude with the Dolomites standing all around it. It's been grazed continuously since the 1600s. And here's the fact I love about this valley. Val Gardena is a stronghold of Ladin culture. Ladin is its own language, not a dialect of German, not a dialect of Italian. A separate Romance language descended from Latin, surviving in these valleys for centuries. You'll see 3 languages on the road signs. You are, culturally, in a country that doesn't appear on any map. Number 13. Switzerland, and 2 of the highest places you can get to in Europe without technical climbing. First, Zermatt. It's a car-free village, no petrol engines, you arrive by train, and you get around by electric buggy or on foot. Sitting directly beneath the Matterhorn, 14,692 feet of near-perfect pyramid. And it's not one of those mountains you have to hunt for. You step out of the station and it's just there, at the end of the street, framed by chalets. From Zermatt, you can ride up to Matterhorn Glacier Paradise, which at 3,883 meters is the highest mountain station in Europe. You're standing on a glacier, looking across the Alps into Italy and France, in a t-shirt in July, gasping slightly because the air up there is thin and it will humble you within about 30 steps. Then over in the Bernese Oberland, Jungfraujoch. They call it the top of Europe, 3,454 meters. And the way you get there is the story. A train that climbs from Interlaken up through Grindelwald and then bores directly into the mountain, running for kilometers inside a tunnel cut through solid rock beneath the Eiger and the Munch, before surfacing at a station in the ice. It took 16 years to build and opened in 1912. 16 years in that era, with that equipment, to build a railway inside a glacier. If you're going between May and August, seat reservations are required. Book them. Switzerland is not a country that improvises. Best time for both is June through September for hiking, or deep winter if you want snow and you're comfortable with the price tag. And that's the honest caveat. This is the most expensive stop in the countdown by a distance. But standing on that platform in the ice, looking down the Aletsch Glacier, the longest glacier in the Alps, running away from you like a frozen motorway, I didn't think about the money once. Number 12. Neuschwanstein. You already know what it looks like even if you've never heard the name. White limestone towers and blue turrets on a wooded crag in the Bavarian Alps, with a lake below and mountains behind. It's the castle. It is the Platonic castle, and the reason for that is direct. It's the acknowledged inspiration for the Disney castle, which means it's the shape that lives in the head of basically everyone on the planet under the age of 90. Here's what makes it genuinely strange, though. It isn't medieval. Construction started in 1868. This is a castle built after the invention of the telephone by King Ludwig II of Bavaria, a deeply reclusive man who was obsessed with Wagner's operas and with a fantasy of medieval kingship that had already been dead for centuries. He built himself a stage set to live inside, and his spending on it, and on his other palaces, was a major part of why he was ultimately declared unfit to rule and deposed. He died days later under circumstances people still argue about. He barely got to live in it. Now 1.5 million people a year come through, up to 8,000 a day in summer. His private fantasy retreat is the most visited castle in Germany. Getting there, train to Füssen, then a short bus to the village of Hohenschwangau at the base, then either a steep 20-minute walk up or a shuttle. Book your entry ticket in advance, especially in summer. They run timed tours, and if you turn up on the day in August, you will not get in. And here's my tip. The interior tour is short and you can't photograph inside. The real prize is Marienbrücke, the bridge across the gorge behind the castle, which gives you the view. Go up there first, get the shot, then do the tour. Best time is late spring or autumn, and if you can catch it with the first snow on the roofs, that's the one. Number 11. Lake Bled. Slovenia is the country I most consistently recommend to people who think they've done Europe, and Bled is why. Emerald green glacial lake ringed by forest with the Julian Alps behind it, and in the middle of the lake, a small island with a church on it. That's the picture, and unusually for a place that famous, it delivers exactly what the photo promises. You get out to the island on a pletna, a flat-bottomed wooden boat rowed standing up by an oarsman, a tradition that's been passed down through specific local families for generations. About 20 minutes across. Then you land at the bottom of a stone staircase, 99 steps, and you climb them to reach the church. Inside there's a rope hanging down, and you ring the bell and make a wish. That's the ritual, that's why everyone's there. And yes, I did it, and no, I'm not telling you what I wished for. A full ticket, including the bell tower and museum, runs around €12. Above the lake, 130 meters up on a cliff, is Bled Castle, the oldest castle in Slovenia, first mentioned in 1011. Go up for the view over the whole lake and the island sitting in the middle of it. That's the shot that makes people ask where you were. The thing I'd actually insist on, though, is the walk. The full loop around the lake is 3.7 miles, 60 to 90 minutes at a gentle pace. mostly flat, and the island changes shape and framing constantly as you go around it. Do it in the early morning when there's mist on the water. Best time is May to September. Getting there is easy. It's about an hour from Ljubljana, and Ljubljana is a genuinely lovely small capital that deserves a night of its own on the way through. Number 10, and we're into the top half. Prague. Of all the big European capitals, this is the one that most convincingly feels like it was built by people who were showing off. It survived the 20th century largely intact, which most Central European cities did not, so what you're walking through is a genuinely continuous medieval and Baroque city, not a reconstruction. Start with Charles Bridge. Begun in 1357, 520 meters of stone across the Vltava, lined with 30 statues and completely free to walk. At 2 in the afternoon, it's a shoulder-to-shoulder scrum of tour groups and caricature artists. At 5 in the morning, with fog coming off the river and the statues emerging out of it one by one, and the castle floating above the mist on the far bank. It is one of the best mornings you will ever have. I'm serious about this. Set the alarm. Above the river is Prague Castle, which holds the record as the largest ancient castle complex in the world. It's not one building, it's a whole walled district with cathedrals and palaces and lanes inside it. Allow half a day minimum. And then the astronomical clock in the Old Town Square. It has been running since 1410, which makes it the oldest operating astronomical clock on the planet. And it doesn't just tell the time, it tracks 3 separate time systems at once, along with the position of the sun and moon through the zodiac. 600 years of gears still turning. Every hour the apostles parade past the windows, a skeleton rings a bell, and a crowd of 200 people watches and then, almost universally, says,